So for anyone who has been keeping up with the news in South Korea, or for South Korea has been going through some things in the past 24 to 48 hours. It was very surprising. My mother actually went to South Korea very recently. This past weekend, actually, she met up with me and Becca for Thanksgiving, along with my dad and some friends of mine. And she had gone to South Korea on Sunday. And then I get like this news after we woke up. What was it? Like basically after this past weekend. And I get this news saying South Korea's president has declared martial law. I'm like, what? All right. And I call my mother, and she's with one of my uncles. And my family's okay. There was there were no shootings or anything. There were no military crackdowns, like the days of old. And by days of old, I mean like less than 30 to 40 years ago. So South Korea has always been, has a long, it's not a very long history, I guess right now, the current iteration of South Korea. So 1948 up until 2024, most of that time period so far has been military dictatorships. Martial law has been declared, I believe, 12 times, excluding this one. And the last one was in 1986, 7. And yeah, it's very jarring. It's very shocking. Martial law essentially means in South Korea that all political activities are suspended. That includes rallies, protests. It does, of course, mean freedom of press is kind of restricted depending on the severity of the situation. And the martial law is essentially a mechanism or lever for the presidency of South Korea to for it to use against the communists, the North Koreans, and other potential insurgent activity to keep the government and the country stable. Which is why he was going on. The Korean president was going on and on and on about the anti-state activities or the anti-state entities, kind of directly. Basically saying the opposing party was part of the anti-state forces trying to take down the South Korean government. And of course, the truth is a bit more cut and dry, right? Like he's on the verge of being impeached. He has like about 18 to 20% approval rating in the entire country. He won very, very narrowly in the last election. Like it's not like he won a landslide vote. He and his family are under investigation for white-collar crimes. So, and this is something I was trying to explain to Becca the other day in terms of like political history. As far back as like thousands of years ago, right? So basically, if you lose your political struggle, if you lose your attempt to gain political influence, or if you lose your attempt to maintain your political power, what often happened was they would basically exile you, imprison you, or kill you along with the rest of your family. And that's kind of been the case even for South Korean politics. If you look at the list of presidents in South Korea and what happened to them, you'd be very surprised to see maybe like 2 of them kind of got away, or maybe 3 of them got away. The rest were like imprisoned, sentenced to death. A couple fled the country. One was assassinated. 2 were assassinated, I believe. At least 2. And yeah, it's a very bloody history. So martial law was declared. What was he thinking? No one knows. I think, from my perspective, I think he was thinking, okay, I'm already kind of unpopular. I can't push through any legislation through a parliament that is controlled by my opponents. So maybe declaring martial law will help grease the wheels, or maybe my own party will support me basically becoming a dictator. But of course, he did not get that support. Some in his opposing party, including the leader of his party, of his own political party, denounced him, and he was forced to call off martial law along with his cabinet, some of who already resigned after that, in like 5.5 hours after he declared martial law. So that's basically what happened in South Korea. Of course, there's the memes and the usual moments and clips coming out of people like yelling at military members, blocking off access to the National Assembly building. That's where the parliament gathers to vote on legislation and work on legislation. And, I don't think it was ever going to be a reality where most of the military are drafted. conscripted. You have to serve a minimum period of time in the military if you are a Korean male. So, on one hand, you have a relatively very small country. It's not that everyone knows each other, but like there's a deep sense of, family, community, due to roots of Confucianism. So it's not like they're gonna suddenly turn the guns on, their own neighborhoods. But also, you also have to understand that the civilian population of men are also trained in the military. Like they had to go through the military. So it's like it would have probably turned things. It would probably turn ugly. Worst case scenario, but I don't think it would have happened. It's not. I don't think it was like the situation right now is like completely different from 40 years ago. And I think a lot of people since then have had the taste of freedom of press, freedom of speech. That's a big thing. And once you kind of taste that, and it's not like this is ancient history. People still remember. People still have scars from being beaten. People still have injuries and other chronic pain. Forms of pain from being shot at. So it's like everyone remembers. So I don't think a military dictatorship would have happened overnight. I think that's crazy. Can I explain what martial law is and how it impacts daily life? The president. So it's in a similar model to the U.S. presidency in terms of like the American president being the chief commander in chief of the armed forces. The South Korean president is also the commander in chief of the armed forces. And martial law, again, would have prevented political activities. It would have infringed on freedom of press, freedom of speech, by essentially, there would be no due process. Daily life, like, let's say everyone just kind of sat down and said, okay, go ahead, martial law. There would be curfews. There would be an intense, like, depending on what they were going for, obviously, right? People could be searched, houses could be searched. Potentially, just like in the past, opposing members or opposing political parties could be suppressed pretty easily, but that's not what happened here. But as far as what's going on right now, based on what I'm hearing from some people I know in South Korea and on the news, of what people are saying on the news from South Korea and social media, because social media is huge in South Korea as well. And everyone's kind of pretty connected, well connected. No one's gonna let this go. There's already 2 unions that will have a definite strike until the president resigns. There's already a ongoing strike, which a very controversial strike by doctors and medical workers right now. That's been going on for 7 months, so that doesn't really help things either. Now you have tens of thousands of people showing up to the Capitol to protest in front of the National Assembly. And in key areas of the city, of the capital city, to basically demand him resigning. So if he doesn't resign, what happens? Well, he's already lifted martial law. If he doesn't resign, he will be impeached. Like straight up, they have the numbers for it in Parliament. So did I see the Johnny Somali Korean stuff? Yeah, I saw the memes, dude. The memes. It's so good. I made a video about this guy, and I'm pretty sure he's still in jail. And he's just kind of like in this country where, martial law is declared, and he can't go. I mean, no one's obviously paying attention to him anymore, I feel like. But I think he's still in jail. Or not jail, but temporary holding. He's not allowed to leave the country. The martial law thing has, it brings back terrible memories for a lot of Koreans. And it's not surprising. I mean, South Korea demonstrations, protests are pretty encouraged, pretty common. So it's not surprising to me that people were turning out at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 2 a.m. to turn out and protest. And then, of course, once more people woke up, it just got bigger. But it does amuse me that he essentially accused the opposing party, which they call themselves liberal, but you have to understand, like, conservatives in South Korea are not nothing like conservatives in America. It's much more far right, and it's just amusing that he would call his opponents, who are not really that far left or not nowhere close to really left in terms of what we in the West would look at as left, as commies. So, all right, Gur. Imagine trying to harass the public in the country, all men in prior military. Yeah, I mean that's a thing. Like that's something you have to take into account. Gun ownership is pretty low in South Korea. You can own guns, but it's pretty hard to. I think it's like 1 in every 1,000 people can have access to small firearms. So I don't know. I don't think you really necessarily need a civil war in South Korea to decide, okay, guys, this is bad. The effects of martial law too, I guess, or sorry, the brief declaration has forced the Ministry of Finance in South Korea to like dump liquid assets into stocks, bonds, forex market, stuff like that, to stabilize their economy, because now the value of the Korean won in comparison to the dollar has unfortunately gone down. So now it's almost like it's over 1,400 to 1,500 won, which is like $1.5 to $1, and that's very worrying because that could cause a chain of events that could lead to not an economic collapse, but a huge economic depression in East Asia, and potentially the U.S. would have to respond with higher interest rates. And it's like, it would just be a complete fucking mess. But that's where the real worry is, I feel like, in some ways, economic, on top of this mess.